So, Steve, over to you.
The first ever Audi 1-2, Aiello and Tomczyk on the front row of the grid. Then Bernd Schneider and Marcel Fessler, Thomas Jaeger in his Mercedes, Abt in his Audi. Christian Albers for Mercedes, Ekstrom for Audi. Peter Dumbreck, 9th on the grid, alongside the first of the Opel Astra 8s. Further down the grid, Joe Winkelhock down on row 8, and row 9 for Darren Turner, struggling with his Mercedes in qualifying. It's a short 7-lap race, the sprint race at the Nürburgring. Cars building up speed down towards the Castrol S. Audi 1-2 across the line, but watch for the action behind, down into that very, very tight chicane. Aiello from Tomczyk, Aiello on the left, Tomczyk on the right. Then it's the silver car of Bernd Schneider. Oh, and there's carnage in the pack. Marcel Fessler, Bernd Schneider goes off too. Christian has been delayed in his Audi. He's rejoined. He's gone off again. Hubert Haupt in the Astra's gone off on the inside of the track. There's bodywork flying. And the only 3 cars unscathed are the Audis at the head of the field. Laurent Aiello, Martin Tomczyk, and now Matthias Ekstrom makes it 1, 2, 3. Christian Albers 4th, Peter Dumbreck 5th, and Joe Winkelhock in the red Astras forced his way through into 6th place. That is an amazing start.
As you say, amazing, 15th on the 6th at the second or third corner. And now he's making another move up the inside and making up some more places.
Oh.
And making up some more places.
Oh, and Winkelhock has gone off. Joe Winkelhock overcooks it completely down at the Dunlop curve. And also off at the previous corner, Jaeger is out of the race as well. A bad start for the Opel Astras. It's the Audis at the moment, still 1, 2 and 3. Then the mass battle of the Mercedes. Aiello, Tomczyk and Ekstrom. Oh, and a huge accident there. Opel's day continues to get worse. Manuel Reuter off, and that's Timo Scheider. He is rejoining with Audi's bodywork. A very bad start for Opel. Audi, though, 1, 2 and 3. And the good news is Manuel Reuter climbing out of that wrecked Opel uninjured. Aiello, Tomczyk, Ekstrom, then it's Dumbreck in the silver Mercedes, Christian Albers in the blue, Pedro Lamy in the very dark blue, almost black car, and minus the engine cover there, Marcel Fessler back in pursuit of Uwe Alpten for Alpten's 8th place.
Fessler on a charge yet again, but here we see the Audi still out front. Aiello, Tomczyk, Ekstrom, a great sight. 3 yellow Audis there, followed by Dumbreck, Albers, Lamy, Mailander, Fessler, Alpten, Turner and Jaeger.
And it's still very slippy out there. The windscreen wipers go, and there's an example. Christian Albers flies across the dirt, right across the nose of Pedro Lamy. And there, the man without the bonnet, Marcel Fessler, still going despite this carnage at the first corner.
And there on the inside, you can see Jaeger out-brakes himself completely, hits Schneider at the back. Schneider spins, but then Jaeger also then takes out both Abt and Fessler, causing absolute chaos and mayhem in the pack. And a lot of cars recovering there. And here we see it from a different angle. You can see Jaeger coming down the inside there, clips Schneider. Schneider goes off to the right. And then he collects Fessler and pushes him into the gravel, and Abt has to take avoiding action and rejoins the track and off again the other side. Meanwhile, here we see the replay, I think, of Reuter's huge accident. It looks like he put a wheel up on the curb and lost it, and then gets launched there at the Audi curb and hits that barrier almost, well, sideways on, and does a lot of damage to the car. But fortunately, he steps out unscathed.
And the battle now on for 3rd place. Matthias Ekstrom holding back Peter Dumbreck in the silver Mercedes. Uwe Alpten there in the black car, right up on the tail of Dumbreck as well. Aiello and Tomczyk now extending their lead, and it is 1 Audi holding back no less than 10 Mercedes-Benz cars. And Bernd Schneider forging his way through that pack from the tail end, but at the front end it's his teammate Peter Dumbreck piling the pressure now on the young Swede Matthias Ekstrom. He's in his first season of the German Touring Car Masters, the former Swedish Formula 4 champion. Meanwhile, we ride with the experienced Uwe Alpten and the even more experienced Bernd Schneider. If there's one man who's the Michael Schumacher of touring cars, it's that man, Bernd Schneider, absolutely storming his way through. Past Marcel Fessler's bonnetless car now, huge big twitch of steering. And Bernd Schneider, very spectacular indeed. But it's Peter Dumbreck holding on at the head of the pack. And Marcel Fessler, not the only driver without a bonnet. This is Timo Scheider on his fight back, clashing with fellow Opel teammate Michael Bartels. Bartels spinning out. He won't be very happy about that, and it is a day to forget for the Opel Astras at the moment. Meanwhile, Peter Dumbreck still holding on, and look who's been bundled down to the tail of the pack. It's now 2 Audis, 1 and 2, Aiello and Tomczyk. Peter Dumbreck third across the line, followed by Fessler, Lamy, Jaeger, Schneider, and all of a sudden Ekstrom there being bundled over the curbs down to 8th place.
But there's a great move again by the aggressive Fessler, really pushing his car to the limit in these very challenging conditions. No bonnet, but it doesn't seem to bother him. Here we are on board with Alton. You can just see what the conditions are like. You can see he's got his windscreen wiper on intermittent, and there's some real argy-bargy there between two teammates.
Yes, Thomas Jaeger and Pedro Lamy battling for 5th and 6th place, and Norbert Haug on the pit wall is absolutely furious at that. He's jumping up and down with rage. Meanwhile, though, it's his Mercedes without a bonnet at the head of the field. Marcel Fessler holding off the attentions of Peter Dumbreck. Dumbreck takes the wider line down into the Dunlop curve. Almost too wide a line, because right up on his tail now, Thomas Jaeger trying to take an advantage, and a tremendous battle going on all the way up and down the field, and scything his way through comes Bernd Schneider at the back of that group. And Bernd Schneider driving absolutely superbly. Peter Dumbreck too. Dumbreck back up into that 3rd place, being followed through this time by Thomas Jaeger. But Jaeger's got his nose on the inside on the run down through the Castrol S chicane. The 2 Audis are already long gone across the field, but it's 3, now 4 abreast down into the chicane. Absolutely superb stuff. And Peter Dumbreck stays on top.
I hate to be in Ekstrom's shoes. He's the one little sole non-Mercedes in that pack of 10 cars. I think he probably feels very lonely. And certainly he found the pressure a bit too much for him, because obviously he made a mistake somewhere and got bundled down a few places on the grid. But there we saw Fessler make a mistake coming out of the Coca-Cola chicane and lose 2 places.
And right ahead of Uwe Alton is still Bernd Schneider in that 8th place. Schneider trying to find his way past Pedro Lamy, the former Formula 1 driver. And Lamy and Jaeger, the 2 most aggressive men in the field here. Here's the replay of them banging wheels on the brakes. Bernd Schneider trying to get his nose alongside to take advantage, but proof that there is no such thing as team orders in the Mercedes-Benz team. And at the moment, heading that team, Peter Dumbreck, really showing them the way. All these drivers on slick tyres on what is now a damp but still slippery track. And Peter Dumbreck reveling in the conditions. Meanwhile, Marcel Fessler still running, of course, without that bonnet on the car, and surprisingly, Will, it's not affecting the car's aerodynamics.
Yes, it's not, but of course there's a lot of cars running close together in a pack, so Steve, maybe that's sort of helping, really. Perhaps if he was running out at the front, it would be more of a problem. He's getting the benefit of the slipstream of the cars in front.
And a great battle at the tail end of that pack now between Bernd Mailander and Patrick Hausmann in the 2 blue Eschmann Mercedes cars. And they are battling for 11th and 12th places. Meanwhile, still holding on in that 3rd place. Peter Dumbreck holds his position ahead of Thomas Jaeger. And Thomas Jaeger still being followed by Marcel Fessler, minus the bonnet. And on to the last lap of the race now. And it's going to be a huge scramble, because Bernd Schneider really pushing the 4 cars ahead of him on the way round through the final sequence of corners, round the back of the pit. Uwe Alton still sitting there, holding station. You can see the spray coming up. It's still very slippery out there. But Laurent Aiello, race leader, is heading for the checkered flag. The question is, who is going to be the top Merc? And it could any way yet, because through, down the inside, Uwe Alton makes a move now. Marcel Fessler gets bundled back in the field, and maybe Fessler's aggressive tactics earlier on have gone against him. And it's Peter Dumbreck looking good at the moment, still there at the head of that group. Thomas Jaeger in the 4th position, the 2nd of those 2 cars. Meanwhile, Laurent Aiello in his Audi is holding on at the head of the field. Great battle now going on between Darren Turner and Matthias Ekstrom in the other Audi at the tail end of the pack. But it's an Audi 1-2 heading for the checkered flag. Laurent Aiello, Martin Tomczyk, the 19-year-old, is heading for a fine 2nd place. And the first ever victory, though, goes to Laurent Aiello for the Audi team and the Audi TTR racer. At last, after over a year of trying, Audi see the checkered flag.
And not to forget, Steve, the performance by Peter Dumbreck, holding off that pack of howling Mercedes to finish in 3rd place.
Aiello and Tomczyk make history for Audi, and perhaps the best drive yet of Peter Dumbreck's German Touring Car Masters career. Thomas Jaeger, Pedro...
Out to the DTM, they're on their warm-up lap, so Steve, take us through the grid.
Thanks, Will, and onto the grid then for the main feature race. Laurent Aiello and Martin Tomczyk, Audi 1 and 2. Then come the massed ranks of the Mercedes-Benz. Peter Dumbreck and Thomas Jaeger on row 2 of the grid. Pedro Lamy and Bernd Schneider on row 3. And lining up 7th and 8th come Uwe Altzen and Marcel Fessler, with Darren Turner 9th, and the next non-Mercedes in 10th place, Matthias Ekstrom. And the best of the Opels is down in 14th place on the grid as the cars come up to the rolling start. Full throttle across the line, and it's the Audi 1-2 again. Laura Yellow, Martin Tomczyk, Peter Dumbreck lining up down the inside behind the 2 yellow cars. Going around the outside though, it's Thomas Jaeger. Race leader, Laura Yellow into the chicane. Oh, mistake by Tomczyk. Dumbreck goes round the outside, and he's got forced wide up onto the curbs, and down the inside comes Thomas Jaeger. Bernd Schneider up into 4th position. Oh, and heavy contact there. Thomas Jaeger very aggressive in defending his place there against Tomczyk. Tomczyk settles into 3rd, Dumbreck into 4th, side by side behind him though now. Lamy and Fessler, and Bernd Schneider really on the move now, right up onto the tail of the second of the 2 Audis. Meanwhile though, it's Jaeger in 2nd place, Tomczyk 3rd, Schneider 4th, but long gone at the head of the field, Laura Aiello.
Aiello's definitely got the hammer down. He's doing what we've seen Schumacher do in many Grand Prix, and Senna used to do as well. The first 1 or 2 laps is the time to get away from the pack. And here we see the start again. Amazingly clean start, but except for Tomczyk here, who made a slight mistake and caused a little bit of mayhem, bit of trouble there for Dumbreck. Dumbreck actually loses out by 2 or 3 places because of it, but everybody else manages to get through.
Well, nearly anyway. Patrick Heisman throwing up the dust on the inside of the chicane there, dropping down the order as well. Meanwhile, at the head of the field, it's still Aiello, Jaeger, Tomczyk, Schneider. Behind them, 5th place battle for Lamy, Fessler and Dumbreck. Then Altzen versus Turner for 8th and 9th. And Darren Turner makes a great move there. Flies over the curbs, outbreaks himself. Round the outside goes Altzen to regain the place. Now, Turner defending furiously against Matthias Ekstrom, the young Swedish champion. And Ekstrom having the door firmly closed in the 3rd Audi's face. But it's the lead Audi of Aiello across the line with the pursuing pack right behind.
And see, the thing we must remember, of course, is that Jaeger is in a 2000 spec car and not a 2001 spec car. So he's at a definite performance disadvantage. And there we see Alain Menu coming through as the best Opel so far. And here we see the replay of Turner's out-braking manoeuvre, actually on himself as it turned out, because by taking the shortcut over the chicane, he lost a lot of drive off the corner and had to defend very aggressively from Ekstrom, who nearly went into the pits.
Now this is interesting, just on the 7th lap of the race, just coming into the 8-lap bracket here, comes into the pits Patrick Heisman. Now we saw him make a complete bolognese of the opening chicane, threw a car across the grass. They've decided to bring him in for his tyres at the earliest possible moment. A compulsory pit stop, don't forget, in this race between lap 8 and lap 18 of the 22. And that means that he is in early and has got fresh tyres on. He's on an empty track, so he can now charge and charge and charge, which is precisely what Darren Turner's doing as well. Great battle on here between Pedro Lamy, Fessler, Dumbreck and Altzen, and behind them Darren Turner throwing up the dust into the face of Matthias Ekstrom in his Audi. Just tremendous battling all the way up and down the order, but Peter Dumbreck, perhaps the unluckiest man of them all there, the silver Mercedes, caught up in the pack after challenging for that 2nd place.
Oh, it's very frantic there through the Coca-Cola chicane, Steve, but these are the 4 young guns that Mercedes have driving for them, and they really are battling for supremacy to see who's going to come out on top. Dumbreck there was obviously some tyre rubbing on the bodywork due to that contact coming through the chicane, and here we see Aiello serenely pulling away from the pack, making it all look very easy.
5th, 6th and 7th places, though, most definitely not easy. And it's still Lamy, Fessler, Dumbreck and Altzen banging wheels, cornering on each other's door handles. And I've got to say, at the moment, Marcel Fessler been very aggressive indeed. Now another compulsory pit stop in, this time Christian Albers. And let's watch the clock on the right of the screen. Absolutely critical, because the time you gain on the track, it's so close in the German Touring Car Masters at this time in the pits. Around about 10 seconds is a good stop. That one isn't. 13.3 seconds. We're bound to see that improved on, I am sure. And that is race over. Well, Christian Abt crashed out on the opening lap of the first of the races. The car hasn't been right since. And Christian Abt, the man who runs the Abt Audi team, is going to revert to the role of spectator.
Well, it's quite a good thing to spectate, of course, Steve, watching his 2 cars out front, so or near the 1st and 3rd, so I guess he's feeling quite happy about that.
Well, Laura Yellow long gone at the head of the field. This is the battle for 2nd. Jaeger in that 2000 specification Mercedes, albeit with the newer engine. Tomczyk in his Audi. And Bernd Schneider, well, the man who's had to work his way up through the order yet again because of that problem in the first race. Don't forget the cars starting in the order they finished the first of the two races in the German Touring Car Masters, and that's meant he's had to climb the mountain this weekend, and he's doing it pretty successfully. Fourth place across the line for Bernd Schneider in the silver Mercedes, closing in on the young 19-year-old. And Martin Tomczak really has been the discovery of the German Touring Car Masters, running in third place there behind Thomas Jaeger at the moment in his Mercedes. And this man graduated from motorcycle engine racing cars in the BMW K class. Then he moved his way through into the German Formula 3 Championship, was snapped up by Audi at the start of this year, done a lot of the development driving on this new longer wheelbase Audi TT Coupe. The car is a lot longer than it was last year, and it's working very well indeed. Now, this is interesting. The two Brits into the pits at the same time. Peter Dumbreck in the front, Darren Turner behind. Now, which of these two cars is going to make up the time in the pit stops that could even move Darren Turner ahead of Dumbreck on the track? It's not going to happen, though. That is a superb pit stop, 8.3 seconds, and Turner's moving again too. 8.5 seconds for them, but that little 0.2 second gap. And down the inside there goes Patrick Houseman. Don't forget, he made the early pit stop, so that strategy's been very clever indeed. And Dumbreck there battling wheel to wheel with Houseman, holds on to the place, so it's 10th place for Peter Dumbreck, but the cars ahead of him will all have to make their pit stops. Houseman in 11th, and Darren Turner, well, he's got caught up in some traffic amongst the Opels as well. He is down to 14th place. That's what the difference was, but that 0.2 of a second in the pits.
It can make all the difference, Steve, but there it was a good move by Houseman to come into the pits early, because clearly he had a clean track ahead of him, clear track ahead of him, rather than being fighting in the Mercedes pack, as it were, and was able to make up track position. And as you can see, he came out almost alongside Dumbreck, who had to be very careful not to lose a place to him, albeit, of course, he was on new tyres, but they are hot, having come out of tyre warmers.
Well, Laurent Yellow's still there at the head of the field. He'll have to make his pit stop in the next 5 or 6 laps. And behind them, Thomas Jaeger, Martin Tomczak, then Bernd Schneider, and then a little bit of a gap starting to open up now between the rest. Fassler, Lamy, Altzen and Dumbreck, of course, one of the first drivers to have made a tyre stop. It's putting Dumbreck back into a pretty strong position, but this race can most definitely be won or lost in the pits. And at the moment, with this level of competition in the German Touring Car Masters, it requires the whole team, not just the driver, to get a victory. Martin Tomczak making a great job, still there in that third place, that young 19-year-old. And don't forget, the man ahead of him, Thomas Jaeger's only in his early 20s as well, comes straight through from the German Touring Car Cup for production cars, has been another driver who has been a young gun recruited by the German motor manufacturers to bring on their career. And don't forget, just a few years ago, it was Britain's champ car race, Dario Franchitti, racing in this series, and a few years before that, one young Michael Schumacher.
It's definitely been one of the main routes through to the top of motorsport, with Mercedes or Opel taking you under their wings and nurturing the talent, as it were.
Now, Laurent Aiello, the Audi pit crew are ready in the pits. Is it for Aiello? Well, time will tell. Yes, it is. We ride with the race leader into the pits for what will be, without doubt, the most crucial pit stop of them all. And I've got to say, for Aiello and the Audi crew, they have never, ever had the pressure of a pit stop while their man has been leading before. And this is going to be perhaps really almost a race they can throw away, but they can't win for him. I really feel for the Audi men from Ingolstadt in Germany. And there they are, on standby, into position, perfect positioning by Aiello. Up the car goes, and don't forget, it's not like a Formula 1 tyre change. You've got to get those big flat wheels and tyres under the very hot wheel arches. But they've done that well. 9.4 seconds. It's not as quick as Dumbreck and Turner. And I've got to say, there is an opportunity for the Mercedes-Benz teams. If one of them can pull an 8-second pit stop, they could be out there in the lead, because the race leader now rejoins in 15th place down the order. Don't forget, that'll reshuffle itself when the drivers have all completed their pit stops. You can see the car twitching and sliding as Laurent Aiello gets the feel of those still quite cool tyres, but now he's back up to racing speed. The leader now, Thomas Jaeger in the Mercedes, Martin Tomczak in second place in the Audi, Bernd Schneider up to third in the second of the two Mercedes cars.
But Steve, Aiello's come out at a very good, with a very good track position, because he's got a fairly clear track now, and he can really get the hammer down and try and get some distance while he can before he catches up with traffic.
Well, a little bit of traffic around at the moment for the race leaders, Jaeger, Tomczak and Schneider. 1, 2 and 3, and I've noticed Bernd Schneider here backing off just a little bit. running in the clear around. Just wondering if he's got an overheating problem. Well, there's a different problem for Peter Dumbreck. He is definitely trying hard at the Hatzenbach.
Yes, that's a big off there. I mean, he must have had his heart in his mouth there, because he obviously got the sort of the whole sequence of the bend wrong there and ended up at the wrong point of the corner, bounced off the curb, and then was just like pogoing across the track, and was lucky not to collect the barriers, but a huge spin that managed to carry on.
And Schneider now into the pits. This is going to be a critical pit stop. It could make Schneider up ground. Now watch the clock on the right of the screen. And that is beautifully done by the AMG men from Stuttgart. 7.2 seconds. Yves Olivier, the leading Opel driver, was in 14th place. That's not such a bad pit stop. 9 seconds for him, but 7.2 seconds. Best pit stop so far for Bernd Schneider, and that could give him track position later on in the race. Thomas Jaeger now, race leader, and don't forget, he's the leading Mercedes driver as well at the moment. These two out on their own at the head of the field, and they have to choose when they make that pit stop now, because they've got to get back out with a fairly clear track. As more and more cars are making the stop, when these guys come out, they're going to be more likely to come out into traffic. It's going to be a tough call for Norbert Haug of Mercedes-Benz, for Christian Abt of Audi on the pit wall. Audi stay out, Mercedes come into the pits, and this is going to be interesting.
And of course, Schneider made up 2 seconds, which roughly was the gap, probably the deficit he had to Aiello out front. So it'll be very interesting to see at the end of this lap where Schneider ends up relative to Aiello. And it's also good to see another Audi leading the race, this time the young Tomczak, and he is now out front, unchallenged for the moment until he makes his pit stop.
Now let's see how Thomas Jaeger does in the pits. Don't forget that 7.2 seconds is the pit stop to beat for Bernd Schneider. Schneider was less than 0.4 of a second behind Jaeger when they were out on the track together. And that, look at that, it's past there now. It's over 10 seconds. That's 3 seconds lost to Bernd Schneider. That is track position gone. Laurent Aiello in the Audi goes through. He's 12th. Schneider goes through. He's 13th. Thomas Jaeger rejoins there in 14th place. Effectively, he has lost a place on the track to Schneider. And look how close Schneider is now to the Audi. That is a result of that very, very speedy pit stop.
Well, see, that's exactly what the whole idea of these pit stops was meant to do, was to bring a bit of excitement and possibly change the track positions of the cars on the circuit. And that's exactly what's happened, and it certainly put a lot more pressure on Aiello now, who before was pulling away quite happily and had a fairly easy cruise, but now, boy, has he got pressure.
Now, this is interesting, though, because Laurent Aiello has Bernd Schneider really starting to storm him. Don't forget, they're down at the bottom of the top 10 at the moment, but the men ahead of them pretty well all still have to come in and make pit stops. They're closing in on Hubert Haupt's Opel. He's in 11th place, and he could unwittingly here be a big friend to Bernd Schneider, because Laurent Aiello is closing in on him with Schneider throwing the dust up into Bernd Schneider's face. But they're catching that Opel Astra, which is very quick in a straight line, but is still slower around the corners than the Audi and the Mercedes cars. And there's this pit stop menu, the leaderboard in the pits at the moment. And just look at that margin of Schneider over everybody else. That really was just a superb job done. I'm sure that Bernd Schneider is buying the Bitburger beers for the guys in Stuttgart tonight, because they really have put him in with a very good chance here. Now, what is going to happen with Hubert Haupt? Haupt, there you can see the power of the Opel Astra. It is a very quick car in a straight line, and Haupt slows the cars down. They're bunching up behind him through the Castrol S there, and that is an opportunity for Bernd Schneider maybe to dive for a gap.
And he's flying, Steve. Look, quickest lap by Schneider, really closed the gap up. Aiello's got a really difficult time here with the slower car in front, but he's got through down the inside, so that's one headache out the way. The other one's still behind him, which is Schneider. It is difficult in these situations. You mustn't drive too defensively, because then you open up maybe the chance for the car behind you to get through. You've just got to drive your own race, and with a car working as well as the Audi is at the moment, clearly Aiello just has to concentrate on just getting as quickly out of the corners as he can, and therefore preventing Schneider making any move on him.
Well, Alan Menu is still running well in the Opel Astra, as the best of the Opel Astras, but I've got to say, and look at the third place car starting to close in here as well. Effectively third place on the road, still actually 12th place in the overall reckoning. That's Thomas Jaeger coming up behind this gaggle of cars now. But we've seen Audi suddenly come good this year, with this car now a longer car, as we see race leader now into the pits, Martin Tomczak. But why do you think Audi have suddenly found the formula?
They've obviously learnt a lot from last year, which was a very hard year, and they've come up with a winning formula. They've made They've stretched the chassis, they come up with a better engine, and all round they've made a very competitive car, as we've seen here. And they really are offering the only challenge to Mercedes at the moment.
Martin Tomczyk, though, problems there in the pits for him. A 10-second pit stop now. There's Michael Bartels in his Opel Astra. Through go Aiello, then Bernd Schneider. Thomas Jaeger's gone through as well, and that means that 10-second pit stop has lost Martin Tomczyk his track position behind Thomas Jaeger. And there you can see it. Jaeger is the blue and white Mercedes at the top of our screens. But look at Bernd Schneider really piling the pressure now on Laurent Aiello. 11 laps completed out of the 22. Still half distance to go. Touring Car Masters at the Nürburgring, and all sorts of problems for Bernd Maylander in his pit stop. We're going to see a replay of this because I don't think of anything like this in the pits. Watch the man on the wheel on the left front of the car. Maylander sets off with the wheel gun still attached. Now watch the whole rig in the pit lane follow him up the track. Will, I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before.
Well, I've seen caravan racing in the past, Steve, but I think a Mercedes running around Nürburgring with a pit trolley behind it would have, might have been quite entertaining, but fairly dangerous.
Well, Laurent Aiello, second place still at the moment in the overall running on the road. Bernd Schneider behind. The reason is the man ahead of them, Michael Bartels, in the yellow and green Opel Astra V8, has still to come into the pits. He's effectively about 10 or 11 places behind these two. These are effectively the leaders on the leaderboard. But the Opel Astra out there, I'm sure now, getting a bit of a television benefit at the head of the field. But Opel, seriously, will have had a real problem this season.
Yeah, I agree with their tactics, Steve, in getting a car out front for television. Here we see a slow motion shot through the Coca-Cola S with Aiello there, perfect line, just clipping those inside markers, and Schneider also. In fact, if anything, the Audi looks more comfortable and looks easier to drive. And if you look how well the young drivers are doing, perhaps that also manifests how good this car is. But as you said, the Opel really is struggling this year. They've come up with a lengthened chassis. They've got a new engine, well, an uprated engine, but really they just can't make the car work. And they believe it's something to do with possibly the chassis flexing and also a combination with aerodynamic problems. So it seems to me, if you watch, that they're quite quick through the slow corners, but in the fast corners they just don't have any balance at all, and the cars look very nervous. And here at the Nürburgring you've got a combination of slow and fast corners, and these corners out the back we're watching now is exactly where you want a well-balanced car to really get the hammer down and to get a lot of speed out of the corners.
Well, at the moment then, the race leader is Michael Bartels, but that's as a result of him not having made a pit stop yet with his Opel Astra, and I think he's determined to stay out there right up to the 18th lap. We're now on lap 14 of the 22. There's the car that's effective with the race leader, Laurent Aiello, former French and British touring car champion, now at the wheel of the race-winning Audi TTR, and behind him, of course, the Michael Schumacher of saloon car racing, Bernd Schneider in that Mercedes CLK Coupe. But interestingly, they're watching that Opel Astra down the straight, down into the Castrol S chicane. The sheer speed of the Opel Astra in a straight line. The guys at Rüsselheimer in the engine department have certainly got it right. Watch this, it's an uphill straight, and look how he opens out distance on the Audi and the Mercedes.
They've got probably the strongest engine, I would think, out there. Last year we saw the same. But it really is the chassis which is the problem, and it'll take them time, of course, because it's very hard to fix these problems in a matter of 2 weeks between races. But here we see the Audi serenely sailing on. It really does look an easy car to drive. You remember last year the Audi was the opposite, a complete handful. It would throw itself off the track at any opportunity, and really wasn't in the race at all. It was just making up the numbers, but now it's doing exactly the opposite.
Laurent Aiello now right up on the tail of Michael Bartels' car, and there's the exact sign you were talking about, Will. That chassis on the Astra obviously inferior through those medium speed corners, the Audi absolutely gobbling it up. It's when it gets onto the straights, and bear in mind that Michael Bartels is no fool when it comes to driving a racing car. He's driven Formula One, he was a front-running driver in the International Formula 3000 Championship, and he really is struggling with that car. Laurent Aiello behind him there, much smoother across the curbs, and catching him every inch of the way onto the straight.
And also Aiello much better on the brakes, again maybe manifesting the fact that Aiello's tyres are working a lot better than the Opels. I should think Aiello is thinking this is a nightmare revisited again. He's already had one problem. He's flashing his lights there to try and get Bartels out of the way. Now he's got a serious problem on his hands again, because you remember last time he followed Haupt for about 2 or 3 laps before he got past him. Bartels is a more experienced driver, probably a bit quicker than Haupt, and it's probably going to be a lot harder for Aiello. He's trying there up the inside, but no, you see, it just proves how this Opel is not that slow. It wouldn't take a lot to make it competitive, and that's obviously what Opel have got to work on over the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Now here's interesting, look at the horsepower again there, the Opel going away from the Audi, and this really is a very difficult tactical situation for Aiello. He knows this car has to come into the pits in 2, maybe 3 laps at the most for that compulsory tyre change. But all the time that Laurent Aiello is holding back, he's got Bernd Schneider, perhaps the toughest racer of them all, in that Mercedes, right on his back bumper. He can't use the pace of the Audi to get away from the Mercedes, and he knows that Schneider could pounce at absolutely any time. Aiello again, right up on the curbs there. And if you watch now, Aiello's closing the door down, making sure that Bernd Schneider doesn't get up alongside, because he's now having to drive almost cross-eyed, one eye on the mirrors, one eye on that Opel in front. And down the hill now, again, the horsepower of the Astra takes it away just a little. This is then, oh, they all close up on the brakes. That's where the Astra's got its weak point, and you can see how ragged it is over the chicane. And Aiello really is now looking down the inside, gets his nose down the inside, and well, Michael Bartos almost squeezes Aiello onto the Armco. Now, that would have been very dramatic indeed. Now, the Audi's alongside. Well, not for long it's not, because, again, that horsepower's taking the Opel Astra away from him. This really is a nightmare for Aiello.
And to top that, Bartels has moved across to defend his line into the Castrol S, the first corner. So, really, Aiello has got a big problem here. It is so important for him to defend his position from Schneider, but at the same time, he's just got to find a way past Bartels, who really is being very obstinate. But of course, he's every right to be there, because he has, as yet, has not pitted.
Well, Michael Bartels, of course, is the race leader. Laurent Aiello is in second place. Bernd Schneider, he's trying very hard to be somewhere else. At the moment, he's in third place. And again, you can see Aiello moving across the track there to block from the Mercedes and smoking its tyres behind. Thomas Jaeger, very aggressive indeed, in fourth place. And just behind him still is young Tomczak in the second of the Audis. He's currently in 5th position on the road, but Michael Bartels effectively won't be on the leaderboard after the next lap. They're now on lap 17 of this race. By the end of lap 18, that Opel Astra has, under the rules, to come in for his tyre stop.
Absolutely, Steve. So Aiello may know that, or certainly his pit crew would have told him, hopefully, to just say, be patient, wait, don't make any rash move unless you can get past him very easily. But of course, you've seen the effect of what Bartels has done. The whole of the first 6 cars are now bunched up behind him, and it really is going to make a real sprint race to the finish.
Now on to lap 18, and still the Opel Astra stays out there. They're going for the TV airtime, absolutely. And Michael Bartos, you can see him watching in his mirrors, and Laurent Aiello takes a look out of the slipstream as the rest of the cars now start to form a traffic jam behind the Opel. Laurent Aiello now has Bernd Schneider, Thomas Jaeger and Martin Tomczak right behind. Then closing in behind them, Marcel Fessler and Pedro Lamy and Uwe Alpsen. Peter Dambreck down in 10th place currently, with Darren Turner right behind him in 11. But still, this Opel Astra continues to throw sand in everybody's face. Meanwhile, the Opel mechanics are standing by for the pit stop. This, of course, is their last possible opportunity. It will be a black flag if the car stayed out for another lap. But now the rest of the field closing up. And I've got to say, Dambreck and Turner at the back of the field really are trying.
Yes, well, they sort of lost out at the start, and they've been having to fight their way back through to the front. One point I wanted to make about Opel, Steve, is that, of course, last year, effectively the 2000 spec cars were competitive, but even the 2000 spec cars really aren't making a showing, either at Hockenheim nor here at Nürburgring. But you've got to remember also that Dunlop have introduced a new control tyre for this year. Maybe it just isn't working for Opel.
That's right, all the cars running in the same identical specification of tyre. It's very much down to the engineers to get the most out of that particular tyre. Now, Laurent Aiello will no doubt breathe a sigh of relief now, because off into the pits goes Michael Bartels for that pit stop. Laurent Aiello resumes the race lead with Bernd Schneider right on his back bumper and Thomas Jaeger in the second Mercedes. Then Martin Tomczak flying through the Coca-Cola chicane, heading down now to the Castrol S, and it's the yellow Audi back in front as the Opel comes in for that tyre stop. Off go the Dunlop tyres, on go the new slicks, and now let's have a look at the clock. It's not going to be the world's fastest tyre change, this. In fact, perhaps they've gone for glory on the TV, and well, maybe the mechanics just aren't ready. Something has seized on the right rear And a lot of work going on there. That has cost poor old Michael Bartels a lot of time and a lot of track position. And Bartels is going to rejoin way down in 14th place after a few laps of glory for the Opel team. Now, though, it's head-to-head between Audi and Mercedes-Benz. The two most experienced drivers in the championship, Laurent Aiello and Bernd Schneider, at the head of the field. The two young guns, Thomas Jaeger and Martin Tomczyk, third and fourth. And, well, we said Darren Turner was charging. How about this for fireworks?
Yeah, it's more than fireworks. That's the splitter. Looks like it suffered a bit of damage over one of the curbs, and that's the rubbing strip just throwing up a lot of sparks there. Very dramatic television, and probably doesn't help his downforce.
Well, it certainly doesn't. Darren's dropped down from 11th place down to 13th currently, and he's going backwards down the pack, so very disappointing for young Darren Turner. Meanwhile, though, it's still Audi versus Mercedes at the head of the field. Laurent Aiello now with 3 laps to go, and Bernd Schneider right on his tail. And I've got to say, is Schneider going to challenge, or is he going to settle for the championship points?
It's a difficult one to call that. He won't like seeing another manufacturer sort of stamp its authority on a race. Maybe it's been another Mercedes, it perhaps wouldn't be so bad for the sort of the corporate picture, but there Schneider has a huge moment there. He just clipped that curve on the entry to the Castrol S and had a real tank slap. He fought it all the way out of the corner, kept the hammer down, and Jaeger's now challenging him. Jaeger's pushing the Maestro to try and snatch that second place, but Schneider's gathered it all up and he's still got the place.
Great piece of defensive driving down through the Ford curve, now down through Dunlop, dropping down the hill, now climbing back the other side. Hatzenbach at the back of the pits, and Bernd Schneider there using every bit of his driving skill. And Jaeger there smoking the tyres as we see the replay.
But it just, Steve, it just proves, you having asked me whether he was just cruising to second place, but clearly the guy is trying very hard. He's pushing hard, and that's hence he made the mistake.
Well, there we see it at 19 laps out of the 22. It's not Christian Abt indeed that is leading the race. It's Laurent Aiello driving Christian Abt's car, but it's Bernd Schneider most definitely still in that second place ahead of Thomas Jaeger, Martin Tomczyk, then Marcel Fessler still holding off Uwe Alsen. Peter Dumbreck there still in the top 10 in 9th position. Look back for him, the second of the silver Mercedes. But the bad news for Darren Turner fans is he is down there in 14th place. Well, it's all happening here in the closing stage of this race. Thomas Jaeger bangs across the curbs. Martin Tomczyk getting squeezed out there as he tries to challenge and find a way around. And right behind them, Uwe Alsen and Marcel Fessler with the green mirrors now. Fessler goes wheel to wheel with the Audi that lost its momentum. Uwe Alsen tries down the inside as well. It's 3 abreast across the track down into the Castrol S, and there's bumping and banging and boring. Uwe Alsen flies across the curb, wings the back of the Audi. He loses ground. It's still Aiello in first place. It's still Schneider in second place. It's still Jaeger in third and the Audi in fourth. But what a tremendous battle. Marcel Fessler there really managing to pull off an awesome avoiding manoeuvre. And Uwe Alsen, now Alsen's dropping his pace, and I reckon he could have damaged that car because he hit those curbs very hard indeed.
He made a very daring dive down the inside there and nearly got away with it, but obviously you don't stop the car very effectively when you get on the grasses, which is what he did, and it was very nearly clipped the back of Tomczyk's car. Here we see it again, the replay. Here he comes all lapped up, down across the grass, and just misses clipping Tomczyk there. And Fessler, who'd lost, effectively gone down to the sort of third place in that bunch of 3, came out on top.
Well, let's take another look at that. I reckon he did actually wing the back of the Audi. Let's see what happens. There's money riding on this, Will. Yep, you're buying the drink. There's the back bumper hanging off the Audi as it disappears down the road. But Uwe Alsen, tremendous regaining of control, but that was very ambitious indeed.
And of course, all started back at the Coca-Cola S when Tomczyk pressurised Jaeger to make a mistake, who went over the grass, and then they all bunched up for the Coca-Cola curve.
Last lap then for Laurent Aiello. It's not over yet, I'm sure. Bernd Schneider still in that second place. Fine third place for Thomas Jaeger. Young Martin Tomczyk learning and gaining performance all the time, even to the detriment of that back bumper. Meanwhile, Marcel Fessler and Uwe Alsen looking very strong, still in the pursuit of the second Audi. Oh, not for long it's not. That is most definitely broken suspension and a wild ride through the gravel trap for Uwe Alsen. But the safety equipment at the Nürburgring doing a great job there. And, well, Alsen knows there's championship points for finishing. He is going to try and get back with 3 wheels on his wagon. I can't believe that he's going to get back there. Dumps a whole load of dirt on the track. He's got nearly all the laps still to do. He's dropping down the hill to the Dunlop curve. and you can hear the crashing and banging as the chassis scrapes along the ground. It's a very different case, though, for the man at the head of the field. Laurent Aiello, through the last few kilometres of the race, it was delight for Audi at winning the sprint race. Now this is the main feature event. There is the man responsible for engineering this car. He can barely watch the last few kilometres. They're coming up to catch Peter Mamorau, running in 19th place in his Opel Astra. But what a result for Audi, heading for victory 2 races in a row, and what a week to do it. The week that Laurent Aiello's former teammate Michele Alboreto sadly died in a testing accident. Now it's jubilation. The good times are back for Audi at the
The second round of the Findus TVR